The Bleacher Report app is your destination for sports. Right now, the NBA's heating up, March Madness is here, and MLB is almost back. Every day there's a new headline, a new highlight, a new moment you've got to see for yourself. That's why I stay locked in with the Bleacher Report app. For me, it's about staying connected to my sports. I can follow the teams I care about, get real-time scores, breaking news, and highlights all in one place. Download the Bleacher Report app today so you never miss a moment.
Have you ever had that creeping suspicion right in the middle of your workday?
Oh, absolutely.
You know the feeling. You're sitting there at your desk, maybe staring blankly out the window for a second to, just collect your thoughts.
Right, or taking an extra 5 minutes to grab a coffee.
Exactly.
Oh.
And suddenly you just touch your mouse just to keep the screen awake.
Yeah, the classic mouse jiggle.
Right. And you wonder, does my employer know a little too much about how I'm spending my time right now?
It's a very real fear for a lot of people.
It really is. I mean, we used to worry about the boss physically looking over our shoulder. But now it feels like the boss is just permanently living inside our laptops.
Living in the software, yeah.
And today, for this deep dive, we're figuring out how that invisible presence isn't just, a paranoid feeling. It's a documented reality that is fundamentally changing the very nature of work.
It is a profound shift. And to give you, the listener, a sense of just how mainstream this has become, we really need to look at the sheer scale of adoption.
Just how big are we talking?
Huge. By 2024, Microsoft's Viva Insights platform had already reached 66 million users.
Wow. 66 million.
Yeah, and that was just 3 years after they launched it. So workplace surveillance is no longer this fringe practice, and it's definitely not limited to, highly secure industries.
Right, it's not just the CIA or something.
Exactly. It's deeply embedded in the standard enterprise software that millions of knowledge workers use every single day.
Which brings us perfectly to the core source for today's mission. We're looking at a really fascinating study by Jonathan H. Westover. It's titled People, Analytics, and Trust: When Transparency Reveals Too Much.
It's a brilliant paper.
It really is. And the research essentially proves that this invisible surveillance is quietly breaking the foundational trust of the modern workplace.
It's fracturing it completely.
So today, our mission is to uncover the invisible algorithms tracking you, explore this really shocking paradox about corporate transparency, and discover how employees are actually fighting back.
To really grasp the stakes of Westover's research, though, we have to start with how this technology fundamentally breaks the traditional rules of employment.
Okay, let's get into it.
So in economics, there's always been this foundational assumption about the workplace. It's called the principal agent theory.
Right. Jensen and Meckling.
Exactly, Jensen and Meckling. And the idea is that you, the employee, always had a built-in advantage. It's known as information asymmetry.
Okay, let me guess. That means, I know exactly how hard I'm actually working, and my manager essentially just has to guess based on whatever I finally hand in on Friday.
That is the absolute core of it, yes.
I knew it.
Historically, you possessed superior knowledge about your own daily efforts. Management could evaluate your final output, but the actual mechanics of how you spent your Tuesday afternoon, that remained largely opaque to them.
It was a black box.
Right. But people analytics, or PA, completely reverses this long-standing dynamic. Managers are no longer guessing. They are collecting what researchers, specifically Leonardi in 2021, call your digital exhaust.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second. Digital exhaust. It sounds incredibly industrial, right? Like you're talking about factories and smokestacks.
It does have that vibe.
But we're talking about white-collar knowledge work. What exactly is the machine spitting out that is so valuable to a manager?
Well, it's much, much more granular than people realize. It's not just counting the emails you send.
Okay.
Modern PA systems are capturing a massive longitudinal data set of behavioral breadcrumbs.
Like what?
They track your keystroke dynamics, your meeting attendance, how quickly you respond to instant messages, even your after-hours activity.
Oh, wow. So if I answer a Slack message at 8 p.m., it logs that.
Absolutely. They analyze time-stamped interactions and communication networks to identify your productivity patterns.
That is intense.
It is. The system is trying to predict if you're at risk of burnout, or flag if you're a flight risk, and even pinpoint exactly where team collaboration might be breaking down.
So in the old days, playing the corporate game was a bit like playing poker.
That's a good way to look at it.
You held your cards close to your chest, the boss held theirs, and there was a bit of bluffing on both sides about how incredibly busy everyone was.
Everyone's always swamped.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you're telling me PA is essentially a system where the boss gets to see my hand, but I still can't see theirs.
Yes. In fact, it goes even further than just seeing your current hand. The software is trying to predict the next 5 hands you're going to play based on your historical betting patterns.
That's terrifying, honestly.
And the software architecture itself creates a massive disparity. Typically, employees get a very basic dashboard.
Like those little pop-ups.
Right, maybe featuring wellness reminders or a little chart showing how much time you spent in meetings.
Yeah, I've seen those.
Meanwhile, managers are accessing deep performance analytics, retention risk scores, and highly granular team metrics. So the power dynamic hasn't just shifted, it has entirely flipped.
Okay, so if the core problem is that management holds all this secret data, the logical fix seems incredibly obvious.
Just show them the data.
Yeah, just show employees the managerial dashboard. Let them see the exact same numbers the boss sees. But Westover's study tested exactly that, and the results completely backfired, didn't they?
They absolutely did. And this is the transparency paradox. The researchers ran a scenario-based experiment involving over 438 to be exact, knowledge workers in Germany.
Okay.
They wanted to see what happens when you attempt to fix that asymmetry. So they split the workers into 2 distinct groups.
Right.
In the first study, the workers were exposed to the full scope of the managerial dashboards. They were allowed to see exactly what management was seeing about them.
The full poker hand.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then in the second study, the workers were only shown the standard employee-facing wellness interfaces.
And here's where it gets really interesting for the listener.
Yes, the workers who saw the full scope of the surveillance, the ones who were given complete transparency, reported substantially worse perceptions of their employer.
Which sounds so backward.
It does. Full transparency actually eroded organizational trust and caused a massive spike in their stated intention to quit the company. Ignorance was literally bliss.
Wait, I have to stop you there.
Sure.
Aren't we always taught that corporate transparency is the ultimate virtue? I mean, in every management book, transparency is supposed to be the absolute bedrock of trust.
It's the buzzword, yeah.
Why in the world does seeing the truth actually hurt trust in this specific scenario?
You would think transparency is always beneficial, but the data says otherwise here. What's fascinating here is that transparency alone is completely counterproductive if it reveals a power imbalance that you cannot refuse or opt out of.
Oh.
When these workers saw the managerial dashboards, they realized the sheer depth of the forced surveillance.
It's like a hostage situation disguised as a partnership.
That is a very apt way to put it. Unlike a consumer app on your phone where you can just, toggle off the location sharing or delete the app entirely.
Right, you just hit uninstall.
Yeah, but an employee cannot unilaterally opt out of a people analytics system without jeopardizing their livelihood. You can't just tell HR, no thanks, don't track me.
You'd probably be fired.
Exactly. Furthermore, the study highlighted that it didn't matter if the analytics system was just doing basic descriptive math, like simply counting hours logged, or if it was using highly complex predictive machine learning.
The reaction was the same.
The exact same. The privacy concern and the erosion of trust were identical. The issue isn't the technical sophistication of the software. The issue is the sudden, stark awareness of your own vulnerability.
Okay, so if employees are suddenly acutely aware of this forced surveillance, and their instinct is to quit, but, they have a mortgage to pay and cannot afford to leave.
Right, they're trapped.
What happens next? Like, what happens to your actual health and your daily work product when you realize you're just stuck under this microscope?
The psychological strain becomes immense. It leads to a concept that Shoshana Zuboff talks about called anticipatory conformity.
Anticipatory conformity.
Right. Because the algorithm is continuously evaluating your performance, you preemptively adjust your behavior to satisfy what you think the algorithm wants to see.
Even if it's not the actual job.
Exactly. You do what the machine wants rather than doing what is actually best for the business.
Oh, this makes perfect sense. It is exactly like teaching to the test in schools.
Oh, that's a great comparison.
When teachers stop teaching actual math and just teach kids how to guess the answers on a standardized test, the algorithm or the school board only sees the test score going up, but all the real complex learning gets completely abandoned.
That is a brilliant analogy. And in the workplace, we call the equivalent of that standardized test score a proxy.
A proxy, okay. This is from Ramon's work in 2021, right?
Yes. Ramon perfectly outlined this danger. The system can only measure easily tracked proxies like the number of emails sent or lines of code written.
Stuff that leaves a digital footprint.
Right. But it completely misses the high-value, invisible work that actually holds a company together.
Right, the system cannot measure me mentoring a junior colleague who's struggling,
No, it can't.
or me sitting quietly with a notepad for an hour, doing deep creative thinking to solve a complex supply chain problem. The algorithm just sees my mouse hasn't moved, so it flags me as idle.
Precisely. Your most valuable contributions become invisible to the system, while totally meaningless metrics are imbued with this false precision.
But hold on, the vendors who sell these tools, they often market them as wellness trackers.
They do, yeah.
Like they literally pop up on your screen and say, hey, you've been in back-to-back meetings all morning. Remember to schedule some focus time. Doesn't that help?
Well,
Or is this just the Hawthorne effect on steroids, where
Yeah.
people just play the character of the perfectly productive employee 8 hours a day because they know they're being watched?
it's definitively the latter. It is related to the Hawthorne effect, sure, but anticipatory conformity is much more insidious.
Also.
With the Hawthorne effect, you might just type a little faster because the boss walks by your desk. But with anticipatory conformity, you are actively changing the shape and nature of your entire workflow to fit an algorithmic mold.
Wow.
And the privacy calculus for the individual worker skews deeply negative regarding those wellness prompts.
Even the nice ones.
Even the nice ones, because even if the prompt to take a break is well-intentioned, the constant monitoring creates a low-level, continuous psychological strain.
Because it's a reminder.
Yes. You're acutely aware that the exact same system reminding you to take a breath is also calculating your flight risk for the HR department.
And what does that constant strain do to a person over time? I mean, it can't be good.
The human cost is severe. Citing Allen et al. From 2016, the research shows that when employees have this PA-induced intention to leave, but they remain embedded in the organization because they need the job, it leads to horrible health impacts.
Like what kind of impacts?
We see severe emotional exhaustion, clinical sleep problems, increased absenteeism, and even elevated alcohol consumption. Seriously. Just from the software.
Yes. The friction of performing for the machine takes a very real physical toll on the human body.
All right, so what does this all mean for the future? If the system is this broken, if we have a technology that reverses the power dynamic, destroys trust when fully revealed, and literally causes employees to lose sleep and drink more, how do we actually pull ourselves out of this mess?
It sounds bleak, I know.
Are there smart companies out there that are fixing this, or are we just doomed to perform for the black box forever?
Fortunately, there is a corporate playbook emerging to fix this. The research highlights several evidence-based solutions where organizations are fundamentally changing their approach.
Okay, good. Give me some examples.
Take Henkel, for example, the German chemical manufacturer. They implemented a system of bidirectional transparency.
Bidirectional transparency, meaning the employees get to look back at the machine.
Yes, but in a very practical, useful way. At Henkel, individual contributors don't just see a generic rating or a wellness pop-up. They get access to the actual algorithmic factors influencing their ratings. Oh, that's huge.
They can see exactly the data points the bosses see, and they can compare themselves to anonymized team distributions. It leveled the playing field because the employee regained some agency.
That makes total sense. If the system is going to judge me, I need the ability to cross-examine the system. What else is working?
Well, Accenture took an approach focused entirely on the managers wielding the tools.
Okay.
They mandate algorithmic literacy. It's a mandatory 3-module training program. Any manager who wants access to PA systems has to pass it. They have to prove they understand the limitations of those proxy metrics we discussed earlier.
Wait, what happens if a middle manager actually fails that algorithmic literacy test? Do they just get, like, a stern talking to and a retake?
No, it actually has teeth. If a manager fails the assessment, they literally lose access to the granular PA data.
You're kidding.
Nope. They are locked out. They only receive high-level aggregated team data until they can prove they know how to handle the detailed information responsibly.
I love that. You do not get to wield the surveillance tool
Right.
unless you prove you understand how flawed it can be.
Exactly. Other companies are relying on strict governance. Siemens AG, for instance, established ironclad people analytics principles.
Like a constitution.
Basically, strict rules stating key A can never be used for individual termination decisions. Plus, they mandate independent third-party bias audits.
That's a great safeguard.
And Schneider Electric created a digital rights committee where worker representatives actually have veto power over any new PA applications before they're even installed.
Okay, I want to zero in on the MasterCard approach because this one blew my mind when I read the research.
Oh, the data dividend.
Yes. Hold on. They created a data dividend that is like earning frequent flyer miles for corporate efficiency. Why isn't everyone doing this instead of just monitoring us? How exactly does it work?
It's a brilliant strategy. So MasterCard deployed collaboration analytics specifically to improve meeting efficiency. They use the data to identify bottlenecks and reduce unnecessary meetings. Then they tracked the estimated hours saved across the company.
Right.
But instead of just absorbing those saved hours as pure corporate profit, they converted those operational savings into additional paid time off.
Wow.
And that time off was distributed back to the participating employees.
They actually compensated the employees for the value of their behavioral data.
Yeah,
That completely reframes the entire technology.
it really does.
It goes from a surveillance tool designed to squeeze an extra 10% of work out of me to a collective tool that literally buys my Friday afternoon back.
Yes. It directly addresses the issue of data ownership. When organizations share those gains, it goes a long way toward repairing that broken psychological contract.
Okay, so corporate benevolence and clever data dividends are great. But relying on management to do the right thing from the top down cannot be the only solution here.
It definitely isn't.
What happens when workers don't wait for permission and take these analytics into their own hands?
This is where the landscape is shifting most dramatically. The research details a rising movement outlined by Nyman and colleagues in 2024 called data-driven labor organizing.
Bottom-up empowerment.
Exactly. It is essentially about using the master's tools to dismantle the house.
Walk me through exactly how that works, because it sounds like a massive shift in how unions operate.
Think about all that digital exhaust we discussed earlier, the calendar invites, the meeting attendance, the active status.
Yeah.
When unions possess the same analytical capability as management, they request access to that exact same granular data.
Right.
But instead of using it to track productivity, they use that digital exhaust to prove systemic issues. They use it to prove pay inequities, identify unsafe working conditions, and document discrimination.
So give me a real-world example. How does a union use, meeting data to prove discrimination?
Imagine a company claims their promotion process is purely merit-based. The union can pull the aggregated metadata for calendar invites over 2 years. They might find undeniable mathematical proof that male employees are invited to high-level strategy meetings 40% more often than their female counterparts.
Oh, wow. The data proves it.
Right. They use the company's own surveillance architecture to document patterns of inequity that would otherwise just be dismissed as anecdotal.
If the company's going to measure everything, the union says, great, let's look at the measurements together.
Exactly. And we're seeing this right now in Germany. IG Metall, the massive metal workers union, is proactively running algorithmic literacy training for their works councils.
That's incredibly smart.
And companies like Volkswagen are actually partnering in these joint trainings. If we connect this to the bigger picture, PA doesn't have to be a surveillance tool. It can actually be a democratizing technology if the power and expertise are shared equally.
Which means, for you, the listener, your required skill set is totally changing right now. Understanding these tools and understanding how your data is collected is no longer just a niche interest for the IT department. Whether you're a graphic designer, an accountant, or whatever, algorithmic literacy is rapidly becoming a basic survival skill for the modern knowledge worker.
It is the new digital divide.
Well, this has been a massive journey today. We started by unpacking how people analytics completely reversed the information power dynamic, right? It took away the employee's advantage.
Yes, the end of information asymmetry.
We explored the shocking transparency paradox, how showing employees the full management dashboard doesn't build trust, it destroys it by revealing this forced power imbalance.
And we looked at the severe physical toll of anticipatory conformity, the exhaustion of constantly performing for a machine.
But thankfully, we found some hope. Companies implementing bidirectional transparency, locking untrained managers out of the data, offering paid time off as a data dividend, and of course the incredibly powerful rise of data-driven union organizing.
The overarching lesson is incredibly clear. Datafication cannot ever substitute for trust.
Which leaves us with one final, lingering question to ponder today. We talked about anticipatory conformity changing your behavior to please the algorithm.
Right.
Let's take that a step further. If all of our performance and professional value is increasingly being judged by the digital exhaust we leave behind our keystrokes, our calendar invites how long until the modern workforce stops actually working, and instead simply learns to expertly pollute their digital exhaust to game the algorithm.
It's a very real possibility.
Right. If everyone is inevitably forced to fake their data just to survive the surveillance, does the entire billion-dollar people analytics industry eventually just collapse under the weight of its own illusion?
It's a house of cards.
It really is something to think about the next time you wiggle your mouse just to keep your screen awake. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, stay informed, and definitely take a moment today to think about exactly what kind of digital exhaust you are leaving behind.